Now, Rwanda Development Board released their 2017 annual report on Monday, August 27, 2018. The report indicates that close to $1.67 billion worth of investments was committed for the next 5 years. We sat down with Louise Kanyonga, Head of Competitiveness and Strategy at Rwanda Development Board, for a detailed conversation on the same. Take a listen.
Rwanda is definitely in a very good trajectory. We registered about 1.6 billion in investments, and that's really looking at commitments from investors over a 5-year period. We saw a 36% growth in exports, close to the 2 billion mark. We also saw tourism revenues generating about over 400 million in revenues, and that's about a 10% growth. And I think this really is obviously a very collective effort. The government of Rwanda is very keen on transforming this country into a middle-income economy and looking beyond that into an upper middle-income economy by 2035. And at RDB, what we have done over the last year specifically is really to start to think about the fact that where Rwanda currently is an inflection point. We're almost hitting our 2020 targets. We're looking now at extremely ambitious targets of being an upper middle income economy by 2035. And so we really went to the drawing board, came up with a new strategy and defined what RDB's contribution to that is going to be. And we zeroed down on 2 things. We need to bring in very proactively investments that are going to respond to the key challenges of the economy, one of which is jobs, and the second which is the trade balance. And so we're looking at investments that are either going to create increasing exports, a very dramatic increase in exports, and equally those that are also going to help to substitute some of the high import bills.
Louise, maybe before we get into all these 4 sectors for the breakdown, unlike the past, today when you speak about Rwanda, everyone is going to be like, oh, the gorillas, so tourism. The target was to bring in a good $404 million on the back of tourism, and of course the gorilla trekking being one of the flagship products. We didn't really hit this target during 2017. Would we have anything to attribute this to?
So I think that we are definitely, in terms of the targets that we had for tourism and the numbers that we computed. There's I wouldn't say that we didn't meet our targets. I think we actually were on target. We are trying to really at this point understand at a national level the impact of tourism, because I think we do have the MICE industry, what it's bringing in. We have leisure, and most of leisure, as you said, is in terms of the gorilla trekking, and we obviously had the hike in the price hike in terms of the gorilla permits. We've seen a positive response so far. We haven't had any reduction in our revenues. It's still too early to tell the impact. But I think we're definitely still, on target when it comes to our tourism revenues. We are working with our different stakeholders at Central Bank, as well as immigration, to bring in all the information and to harmonize our definition of what constitutes a tourist and the revenues that are coming from that, and make sure that we all have sort of the same figures. But we are on target. We hit our target.
Beautiful. Now, we do know that in 2017 the commitment towards investment was up to $1.67 billion. How much of this has been brought to the table so far?
Yeah, so that's I think a bit of a question that we need to unpack a little bit in terms of what the numbers represent. So when we speak about 1.67 billion, that's obviously a commitment from investors that over a 5-year period, this is the amount of investment that we pledge to bring into the country, and this is from very detailed business plans that they submit to RDB. So these are really looking over a 5-year span, right? To then compare that to what actually comes into the economy, you're now looking at a 1 year, or less span, and these are figures that come in, obviously over after some time. We are working very closely with the Revenue Authority, with the Bank of Rwanda, looking at the national accounts. And that's information that is still coming in, that's still being computed from the returns that investors are submitting, and also from the National Bank looking at FDI inflows. So there's always a time lag between our registered commitments at RDB and then the actual figures that are coming in from these different sources. But just to really give you a sense, if you look at at least a 3-year trend over the last 3 years, the actual investments are very much aligned towards the registered investments in terms of figures, and actually slightly above. We usually have more investments coming in actually to the table than what was pledged and what was committed. But to answer you very specifically, we're still the figures are still coming in, so that we can compute in 2017 what were the actual investments that came.
Rwanda's MICE industry, that is meetings, incentives, conferences and events, is targeting $74 million growth in 2018. But which kind of strategies are being put in place to ensure that these numbers are met or even surpassed?
What we are doing, and which we need to really ramp up, is the business side of the MICE industry, which is going out and very proactively bidding for for international events. I think we've put in place the right infrastructure. The government has put in place, you've seen the Convention Bureau and all the other meeting infrastructure that has been put in place, the connectivity through Rwanda Air. And this has really set us up to a place where Rwanda is really starting to emerge as a destination, at least in the continent for MICE. We're now third in the continent, right after South Africa and Mauritius, and those have several other cities that boost their MICE sector. We just have Kigali, so we're a strong contender, and we're now really leveraging on that awareness of Rwanda as an emerging MICE destination to go out and proactively bid for conferences and events to come to Rwanda. We have a team a very strong marketing team that is constantly traveling the world and the continent to attract players to bring major events here. We obviously are going to continue to expand MICE infrastructure, particularly in the secondary cities. I think Kigali is so far really the key destination for MICE events in the country, but we want to see the benefits that come from the industry being spread across the country, and so looking at putting in place infrastructure in the secondary cities is also going to be a key strategy going forward.